All right, guys. This is a Talkback podcast for Hellboy 2. Um, Welcome all you Talkbackers out there. Websites www.talkbackworld.net. For those who do not know, those who are not in the loop, not in the realms of Talkback, if this is your first episode that you're listening to, first podcast, welcome. This is actually it's a bit late, to be honest, but obviously the way Talkback works, this is not technically a review, but more, if you want to call it analysis, but just quick overview of what I my thoughts, the Merc's thoughts are on this movie. Have Hope has not seen this movie as well. Have Hope is actually being very picky about his films these days, so he's not watching that many pictures. But I'm still out there, still doing what I need to do, watching as many of the films as I can, not always in the cinema, but anyway, that's just my situation. But yeah, no, Hellboy. I was never really a Hellboy guy. Like I never read the comics to any real degree. I think I might have read one ever. It never really grabbed me as something that I would be particularly interested in. So I only knew vaguely what the story was about. Um, I saw the first one in New York, actually, at the premiere in New York, and actually at the screening that we had that time when first Hellboy came out. Ron Perlman and Selma Blair, I think it was, were actually there. They actually came and spoke to all of us in the cinema just before the screening, which was actually quite unexpected, but they're actually there. I think it was the midnight screening, actually, of the movie, the first screening that I was at. And I was looking forward to the whole thing because at that point I didn't know too much about Guillermo del Toro, but I'd seen Blade 2. And Blade 2 was okay. I mean, visually it was very good. Artistically it was good, but I didn't think it was as good as Part 1 by any stretch of the imagination. So Hellboy 1 was, to me, average. It wasn't anything special. As a film, there was just nothing really to it, in my view. I thought the strength of Hellboy was the makeup, the design, the artistic direction of the film, the special effects, and obviously Guillermo del Toro's never failing ability to create like fantasy worlds that really look unique and interesting. Like everything that he's ever done, when it comes to that aspect of it, it's always like amazing to look at and amazing to see how his creativity works. But as a film, I've always thought he was lacking as a storyteller, and people would always attack me that, oh, he's such a fantastic visionary, and I'm like, you know what, look, man, there is no Guillermo del Toro movie that I've ever seen that within a week I haven't forgotten three-quarters of the story of what happened in the film. All that sticks with me are visual elements like Pan's Labyrinth, the crazy monster thing with eyes in its palms, and all that stuff. Like, those are the kinds of things that I remember from his movies. The story of Pan's Labyrinth, I mean, within a week or so, I'd more or less forgotten what that story was about. And that's because I feel he does focus a lot more on the aura and the visual elements of his films, as opposed to actually looking at character development, looking at the actual story and how the story works. Because it might be unfair to say there's no characters, because he does have characters. Like every film has really developed characters. Like Hellboy as a character, there's a lot about him that by the end of the first movie you feel, oh, I really know this character, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, when you look at it as an overall, I can't compare Hellboy to any above average superhero movies that have come out. Batman, Tim Burton's Batman, both of them were better than either Hellboy movies. Dark Knight is in a different league to Hellboy 2. Incredible Hulk, I thought, was a better film than Hellboy 2. And people would say, oh, you're mad. No, I do. That's what I think as well. So was Iron Man, was a better film than Hellboy 2. Because as a movie, there just wasn't that much. I mean, it's like almost like Hellboy 2 followed the basic templates. Like it was just, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew how it was going to happen. And you're just watching it to just say, okay, what twist are they going to put on this tried and tested formula of, bad guys golden army. He has to reawaken the golden army, so he has to go after some key, the spread like Ghostbusters or whatever you want to call it. They've been doing this for like the last 20 years. He has to go after some key and then release the golden army to destroy the world forever and blah blah blah, and then he has to stop them, and then the army then gets turned on, all this stuff. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking, I'm like, oh, this is just, so my brain switched off completely by midway. So all I was looking at was the fancy, SFX and the makeup design and so on and so forth. But my brain was completely switched off. And to me, that's unfortunate because I feel like the Hellboy character could be a lot more. There's a lot in there. I'm not saying making it dark. Like some people have said that, oh, it's to do with hell and demons. It's got to be dark. No, I agree with the angle that Guillermo del Toro goes with this thing that, you know what, look, we've got some dark things, but this is supposed to be fun, enjoyable, you laugh, there's comedy and so forth. But the problem is that it's not on the level of like Ghostbusters where you're laughing, but it's a movie. Like I remember the plot of Ghostbusters and it was for the time, it was unpredictable. For the time. I mean, this we're talking about the 80s, early 90s or whatever you're talking about, So I mean, those were the issues that I had with this film. Performances wise, obviously Ron Perlman's always good, and everybody, acting wise, it was as good as you can expect. It was nothing, no negative stuff there, and I think it just comes from the script. I mean, if the script calls for you to do particular things, there's nothing you can really do about it, and I think this doesn't bode well for The Hobbit. I mean, as a visual director, there's nobody better to do a Lord of the Rings thing if Peter Jackson isn't doing it. I mean, Guillermo del Toro, I think his Hobbit is going to look better than any of the other Lord of the Rings movies. It's going to actually be crazier. It's going to have more fantasy elements to it. It's just going to be like amazing when it comes down to like what you're actually seeing. But as a film, he's never made anything that strikes any real chords with me. It's either just extremely violent, where like in Pan's Labyrinth, like some of the violence was just shocking, or you're like, wow, man, that's really cool, but then you walk away from it. Like something that I've always hated that he does in a lot of his movies is ridiculously stylized violence. Like this violence is stylized to the point of, like you're looking at Hellboy 2 and the way this guy's fighting with his sword and everything, I'm like, oh my, everything is a pose. You come down, it's a pose here, pose there. Like somebody's taking photographs of this guy. And I'm like, I mean, there's a limit. This thing is more stylized than The Matrix. I felt more danger and realism to the Matrix fight sequences than I've ever done in any of Guillermo del Toro's fight sequences, whether you're talking Blade 2, Hellboy 1 or Hellboy 2. And to me, that's not the kind of thing you want to see in a Lord of the Rings movie. Like the thing that struck a chord in Lord of the Rings is that he brought a sense of reality. Peter Jackson brought a sense of reality to something that was completely fantasy, So you actually almost started believing this could have actually happened in human history, even though it didn't. And that was the strength of it. So now shifting to a guy who makes things so fantastical and so stylized, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, I'm still going to see it. But those are my feelings on Hellboy 2. So I'm not saying people shouldn't go out. I mean, out and watch this film. If you're a fan of his work, you won't be disappointed. But for me, nah, not my cup of tea. Anyway, that's that. Always on the website, talkbackworld.net. The Senate is always there. We're always welcome to share your views. Bay out, Spielberg in.